Aibobo, bon comba. Aibobo, bon comba. Aibobo. One of the things that we're hearing about at the moment, my sister, the number one headline is gang take over the country. Pierre, plenty gang all about the place. Yeah, whether it's the city or the rural area, them Haiti full up a gang right about now. Yeah. Could you just contextualize this for us, my sister? Please let us know the extent to which the headlines regarding gangs are accurate, should be believed, or whatever. What's the situation with the gangs in Haiti at the moment?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, after I've explained to you how the U.S. went in, took our president, put him on a plane, how Hillary Clinton went in, demanded that the election results be changed. To me, the biggest gangsters in Haiti are the ones in suits. The biggest gangsters in Haiti are the U.S., France, Canada, and now Brazil playing these roles of you know, as so that's the first. And if we don't see them as the biggest gangsters, as the ones that actually need to be prosecuted and brought to heel, then we don't understand what's happening in Haiti. So that's the first. The second thing is, they've always used the term gangs and bandits and stuff. If you go back to Western news media from 1800s, 1700s, you know, they're using this kind of language. I don't like the language of gangs for a number of reasons. On the one hand, I think it's a racist term used primarily for Black countries, right? And it's just like this upheaval of these people just going around. And it's almost as if the Western media presents this as if just out of nowhere, these Black people start killing each other, right? It's just like they're just running around out of nowhere. So that's the first. The second thing is, a lot of these groups are, I call them armed groups because they're paramilitaries. A lot of them are former soldiers, they're former police. A lot of them trained by the U.S. because there's a former, you know, the same people that were there in 2004 that were being trained by the U.S. They're the ones with the military equipment. The military equipment comes from the U.S., right? Haiti does not manufacture guns. It does not manufacture ammunition. Haiti has 5 private ports owned by the white and Levantine oligarchy. The guns come through the private ports and then they're distributed. But there's also a history of all these old oligarchies, these old families who used to pay young people back in the days to basically go and like rough up, kidnap their rivals, right? So this history goes back a long time where they would go, the oligarchy would pay armed groups to do this, right? But there's also the other history where whenever Haitians would get up and protest, what would they do? The sitting government, like Ariel Henry did it, Michel Martelly, would arm their goons to go and basically shoot into the crowd against legitimate protests. So for example, in 2020, 2021, one of the first things Ariel Henry did, which Haitians did not want for a long time, was remove fuel subsidies. IMF had been demanding that Haitian government remove fuel subsidies. And you live in Europe, part of it's like, you know, a lot of these...
Sorry, my sister, not to interrupt you. Just explain for those who may not be cognizant, what is a fuel subsidy?
Right. And so what happens is, so far as farmers in Europe get subsidies, right? Because they can't sell, a lot of times they don't sell a lot of their products. So they get government support. The government doesn't charge them. They subsidize the oil that they subsidize the farming industry. You know, states get subsidies. Rice farmers in the U.S. get subsidies because they can't sell everything. And so in order to keep the business going, they do that. In Haiti, we don't get many subsidies. One of the things with gas prices were a bit lower because the government was absorbing some of the costs in order to help the population. That's the one subsidy Haiti have. Whereas in the Europe and the West, everybody has a lot of different subsidies, right? The IMF has been basically wanting to impoverish the country even more, demanding that Haiti remove the fuel subsidies from the people. And the people have been protesting against it a long time, but even Jovenel Moïse could not do it because it was so unpopular and the people would be in the streets protesting. But Ariel Henry did it, and inflation went up 40% overnight, right? Yes. So your bus ride, which might have been 50 cents, was like, you know, $1.50 the next day, and your family says, this is what happens. So when people are in the streets in the millions, right, protesting this, he sends armed police and armed goons to shoot at people. And then he's like, those people protesting the street are gangs. So they always throw the war gangs around to legitimate protests and so on. So we have to be very careful when we use the term gang. I use the term armed military because we use gang, you just basically forget the thing that the U.S. calls the protest gangs. In 1915, when the U.S. occupied Haiti, they called them gangs and bandits with people who were protesting. And so it hides the complexity of the situation, but it hides the reality that these groups have been basically, there weren't that many of them, and they weren't so well armed 2 years ago before Ali was in power. What's happening now is the dumping of military equipment into Haiti. Chaos. What the U.S. did in Honduras, if people don't remember, in the 1990s to create chaos. And that's what happened in the last 30 months under Ali, with the elite being part of this, dumping arms into the country to create havoc.
Okay, beautiful. And so some of the headline names that we know of are the G9 family, which is headed by Jimmy Cherizier, who is also known as Barbecue. There's another of the gang, so-called, is referred to as the 5 Second Gang, and the leader is known as Izzo. And there's a few other so-called gangs, which you have correctly referred to as militia groups. Now the question is, my sister, among many Pan-Africanist circles, the question is the extent to which the characterization of gangs is being used to hide an armed resistance against neocolonialism in the form of these gangs. To what extent can we regard the militia groups as a resistance to neocolonialism, or a capitulation to it, or a product of it working in the interest of the neocolonial power masters, so to speak?
That's a great question. And the honest answer from me is that remains to be seen, because I do think they are a product of this neocolonial. Remember, these gangs are funded by the elites, and they, lately what you've been seeing is all these videos by these members, these armed groups saying, well, so-and-so, you paid me to do this, right? Calling out the elite for paying them. And the reason they came together, they call themselves Vivam Sum, live together. All these various groups, armed groups, are saying that we're tired of fighting against each other on behalf of the elite, on behalf of these armed groups. And so I do think, there might be a possibility. I am not one to be like Barbecue, Jimmy Cherizier is a revolutionary just yet, because I actually think, in the local, a lot of the violence that's happened with these armed groups has been in the poor, popular neighborhoods. And so the people suffering the brunt of this are the poor masses. It's only yesterday, for example, that they actually attacked the rich areas. And I was like, oh, okay, you're finally attacking the homes of your masters, right? And so what begins, I do think there's, there are two things going on with Jimmy Cherizier. People are saying he's a revolutionary. I'm not saying that, but I'm also not going to demonize him, right? Because I do think one of the things that people do, they turned him into a monster. Like, this guy is like the biggest monster, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, you've got Netanyahu genociding Palestinians, but nobody's going around calling him a monster.
100%.
Right? You got Joe Biden, nobody's calling him a monster. How many deaths are, how many deaths is the U.S. responsible for? How many millions of lives? And nobody's calling these white people monsters, right? And so I do think, so I'm, the thing is open. The guy Guy Philippe, who the Western media seems to love, right? Even though, he was also he was trained by the U.S. to go after, he was part of the coup d'etat against our elected president. And so for me, it would take a lot for me to actually forgive that. I actually think he should be tried for treason, right? People don't want to hear that. That's the reality. So
100%.
We're in a stage where we don't know, who's funding these guys and who they're working for, because they are funded by outsiders. And they were being paid by the elite, and so on and so forth. And until something happens that shifts from what they're doing in terms of like looking out for self, that shifts to some kind of real revolutionary discourse and action, that remains to be seen. And we have to remember, the Haitian Revolution happened like this, right? In the sense that it was like 13 years of infighting and so on and so forth before there's something that came together. Like even Toussaint Louverture, who I love, and my son is named after, but he was working on behalf of, he trusted the French, which is why they ended up taking him and, you know, sending them away. And so we don't know what could emerge out of what's happening right now. But what I do know is that Haitians are angry, and they are tired of these white people. They are tired of the so-called international community. And the international community is not really, it's France, US, and Canada. Let's be real. They don't have anything to do with these people. They, you know, I mean, the nationalist fervor is stronger than I've ever seen it. And that to me is more, that's the beauty. That's, you know, out of all this ugliness and pain, that's the beauty I see. It's just people are coming together and saying no more of these foreigners, you know, taking charge and ruining our lives.
My sister, let me just add the United Kingdom of Great Britain to your list of neo-colonizers. Can't forget, you know what I'm saying, the big daddy colonizer on deck. And
they're part of the core group. They're part of the core group. That's for sure.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So I just have to make sure that we put that in the situation, because I have the unfortunate you know, reality of having to live in this godforsaken nation state, which is the queen mother of colonizers. But we don't want to forget that. At the same time, I did neglect to inform brothers and sisters that our sister Jemima is also born in Haiti. Yeah, so I want to make sure that I mention that.
I still have family suffering through. Yeah, Yes,
I'm going to come to exactly that point in a second. Yeah, so I want to make sure that I mention that we're talking to a daughter of the soil.